they're contingent and they're caused, then they'd have to have like a cause that is in themselves. And
Okay.
so it would cause like a causal chain that would have to end in a mereologically simple being, so like a god. And then, yeah, that's the argument.
When you say mereologically simple, go ahead and what do you mean by that? Just really quickly.
Being without any parts.
Being what in parts?
A being without any parts.
A being without any parts. Okay. So you're saying that there's some contradiction in it not being reduced down to a being without parts. What's
Yeah.
the contradiction there?
All
What's
right.
the contradiction?
So, okay, let's go back to the circle analogy, right? And let's say that a dot within the circle represents, I don't know, a mereologically complex being, or let's say a dot represents a being composed of parts. Yes? Cool. Let me know when you like lose track or something. So let's say that there are 10 dots within this circle. And then, I don't know, let's say, Mason comes and says, well, who drew all of these dots? And let's say I say another dot drew all of these dots. That wouldn't actually answer the question, because all
Why
of
is
the
that a
dots are
contradiction?
no, it's this. I'm not getting to the. I'm getting there, but I'm trying to use an analogy to explain why it would be a contradiction. So, if I ask you, who drew all of the dots? Why do all of the dots exist? And you say another dot, or that dot that you're now invoking would be included within the totality of dots, right? So you're not actually answering the question. So the
I don't
only
see
way
how
to
not answering the question entails a contradiction. Like, again, what are you affirming to be true and not true at the same time, right? That are mutually exclusive of one another.
You're affirming that nothing can cause and not cause at the same time. So essentially, if you're saying that it doesn't have to terminate in something that isn't a dot, right? So nothing.
I'm sorry, I'm saying that nothing can cause what?
Okay, if you affirm that the totality of dots is not caused by another dot, but is also not caused by something that isn't a dot, you're affirming that it's caused by nothing, right? I think it's disjunctive.
No, what I'm asking is, if somebody were to affirm that it's caused by another dot, is there some kind of contradiction there?
In trying to explain the totality of dots, yes.
No, it seems like you're saying that it's not like a satisfying answer to explain the dots, but there's a difference between giving an unsatisfying explanation for the dots and outright providing a contradiction. Like, you made the claim that there's some sort of contradiction being proposed when you say that all of these dots came from another dot, but I'm failing to see what specifically is being affirmed as both true and false at the same time, or what specific contradiction is being affirmed. That's what I'm curious about. So what is it?
It's a step-by-step entailment, right? So if we're talking about the totality of the dots, we're not just talking about a group of dots within the set. We're talking about every single dot that exists. And so if I ask you, what causes the totality of dots? And you say another dot, that other dot would be included within the thing that's in question, which is what caused all of these dots to exist. And so it could not be another dot.
Why is that contradictory? Why is that problematic? I'm still not understanding. It seems like you keep reaffirming that it's just like it's a part of the set, and so it's not a satisfying explanation for the set itself. But you specifically said that there was some contradiction to be pointed out about affirming that a dot was responsible for the other dots, and that's still not clear what that contradiction is.
Yeah, because if you're saying that the totality of dots is caused by another dot, then what caused that other dot, right?
That's not a contradiction. That's just outlining that the answer doesn't feel satisfying to you. That's not the same as affirming a contradiction.
Obviously, it would be a contradiction. I'm saying it's an entailment. So obviously, the entailment here is that nothing caused the dot, right? Or the dot caused itself. And
what do you think the contradiction is?
The contradiction is when you affirm something to be true and not true at the same time.
Yeah, so how is that explanation not sounding satisfying to you? The same as affirming something is true and not true at the same time. Like, I'm still like.
Yeah, so folks, I'm not going to just jump into why nothing causing something is a contradiction. You need to understand first and foremost why.
That's not what we were talking about.
Wait, folks,
you said that affirming that nothing caused it is like a consequence of okay. No, I just want to outline with the contradiction.
No, I'm clear with what you're trying to say. I'm saying that where we're at now is what caused the totality of dots, right? You need to understand then that this question that we're asking, right, it's either another dot caused it or something that isn't a dot caused it.
I understand that, but it feels like you're repeating yourself and stringing me along instead of just pointing out the actual contradiction is. Can you
Folks,
just
okay,
answer what specifically
okay,
is being affirmed
I'll write it down
true and
for you.
false at the
So
same time?
the contradiction is that nothing can both cause and not cause at the same time. And then you're going to ask me, well, how am I affirming this? And then we're going to go
When
back
did
to
I
the
affirm
entailment
that
proof.
nothing both caused it and didn't cause it at the same time?
Exactly. So can we go back to the entailments of the initial
So I
statement,
so I
please?
didn't affirm that. I was questioning
No,
what the
you did.
contradiction is in affirming that one dot caused the other dots, and you
It,
just like ran to the other topic of, well, like, nothing can't cause, like, nobody was talking about nothing.
no,
How did we
folks,
even
see,
get there?
it's an
I just
entailment
want you
of
to tell me what the contradiction is.
folks, it's an entailment of your position. So your position entails that nothing caused the dots. That's the whole point.
How does my position that one of the dots caused the other dots entail that nothing caused the other dots? How does
Because
that work?
you saying one of the dots caused the other dots is not answering the initial question, right? So if I say I'm going to write it out for you, if I say that there's this one dot and this one dot is separate from the group of dots that it causes, it doesn't explain the totality of dots, right?
Do
I'm
you think
asking
not
what
offering an
caused.
explanation is the same as a contradiction?
Not offering an explanation is the same thing as saying nothing explains it, right? So I think so,
No,
yeah.
it's not. If I say, wait, that's not the case. If you ask me why the sky is blue and I say, I don't know, if I give some sort of non-answer, am I contradicting myself?
If you give if I ask you why the sky is blue and you don't give me an answer to why the sky is blue, I don't think that's the same thing as saying nothing explains the sky being blue.
Yeah, but I didn't say nothing explains the sky being blue. You just kind of insinuated that giving a non-answer, not giving a satisfying explanation, is the same as providing a contradiction, which is
Okay.
patently not the case. Now, what I'm asking you specifically, right, in like the hypothetical you yourself presented, is if
Mm-hmm.
I just said that the dot caused the other dots and another dot caused that and another dot caused that, what contradiction am I engaging in? How does that
So
entail that
are you
nothing caused the dots in the
are you
first
looking
place, like
in
you're
are you
claiming?
looking are you looking in VC chart? And I think this would be better to illustrate, bro.
No, I'm not looking at VC chat. Should I be, or like, can you vocalize what you're trying to argue?
I already vocalized it, but I don't think it's that effective. So I'm going to show you in VC chat what I'm talking about. So if you look in VC chat, you'll see
Okay.
two brackets and then you'll see dots within the bracket, right? Periods, whatever you want to call them, full stops.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask what caused those dots to exist. And then you're going to say another dot, right? So
Sure.
then now there's a dot outside of this bracket. But I'm asking,
Why is it
what
outside
caused
of the bracket?
it?
Why
Because
can't I
it's
just say that it's a dot that's inside of the bracket, but you didn't reveal initially?
because you're saying that the bracket is talking about what is caused, right? So the dot
Yeah.
is causing the other dots, unless you want to say the dot caused itself as well.
No, I'm saying why can't there just be like a innumerable amount of dots within the brackets? Like, what would be the contradiction in that explanation?
Innumerable as in infinite. I'm not
Sorry?
sure. As in, it can be infinite. I don't think that poses any issues for my position, right? So let's say there's an infinite.
Well, does it pose a
amount.
contradiction?
No, that can be no contradiction if it being innumerable. As long as there's an innumerable amount of dots within the bracket, that's fine.
So then, I'm sorry. So then there's not a contradiction that you're outlining. There doesn't
No,
have to
there
be.
is. Because if I'm asking you what caused, okay, when I say totality, I'm talking about every single dot that exists, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So then if I ask you what caused the totality of dots to exist and you say another dot,
Yeah.
right?
What's the contradiction?
Wouldn't I also be asking what caused that dot to exist? What caused all of these
Yes,
dots
and
to
you can just
exist?
say it's another dot. Look, I'm not interested in like doing the whole
No,
repeating thing where we just go
I'm
ad
not.
nauseum.
Oh my
Okay,
lord.
I think
Folks,
I've
okay.
given you enough chances to like provide why there's a contradiction in saying that even an infinite amount of dots caused all the other dots, right? To which you said that there was a contradiction you could point out, and it doesn't seem like that's the case. So I would
Yeah.
ask that you either consider that your argument is flawed and that maybe you misspoke, or maybe you can't prove that there's a contradiction and we can move on. Or if you're not willing to admit that, that's fine. But I would still ask to move on because it's getting a little bit boring.
Yeah, so I wanted to avoid all the philosophical jargon. So I wanted to make my speech and my debates kind of accessible, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get through to without using them, right? So essentially, I'm not
You don't
talking
think
about a
you're going to be able to
linearly
get
or
through to me without jargon?
I'm not without philosophical jargons, no, right? So what you're describing
Wait,
to me is,
if you don't believe you
hold
can get
on,
through to me with like
hold on,
regular language, why would you go to
hold on.
jargon? How does that make
When
sense?
I say philosophical jargon, I'm talking about philosophical language, right? So obviously, I've been avoiding the usage of philosophical language, but I'm going to start
Yeah.
using it now to further drive my point home.
But why?
So I'm
That's
not
like
describing.
okay. No, see, this is
Hold
sorry.
on,
That's a
folks,
waste of
folks,
time.
folks.
The reason that
Wait,
I always ask
no,
you
no,
to
no, no,
engage in
no.
regular
Please,
language is
please,
because you know that I'm not that
please,
well
please.
delved into philosophical language. So why would you go to philosophical language if you're not even clearly communicating your idea in like normal
No, no.
language? And you know that
That's
well
oh
versed
my
in
goodness.
philosophical language.
Why do you do
By the
this,
way,
bro?
he's like
Okay,
he doesn't know what he's
listen.
talking about either. So don't like he's confusing a lot of stuff too.
Anyway, so that's what's in question, right? So whether I'm conveying my point clearly, what I'm saying is I'm going to use more subject-specific terminology, right? So what I'm saying is, in a more clearer way, is I'm not talking about a linearly ordered series. I'm not talking about, oh yeah, what caused this one, another one, what caused this one, another one, what caused this one. That's not the type of causal chain that I'm referring to. I'm referring to a hierarchical one, or for lack of a better term, a one regarding totalities, or like everything, all things, right, of this type. And
Can you
so
give me, just
the
for the sake of
issue,
clarification, wait, just for the sake of clarification, can you give me the distinction between a linear causal chain and a hierarchical causal chain, as you're putting it?
yeah, so for example, a linear one could be dominus, right? So my finger pushes one dominus.
What the fuck?
I assume he'll be back.
His parents probably came into the room.
Wow.
Talking about that philosophical shit again, son. Why don't you get out and get a job?
Yeah, no, C's totally lost. He has like no idea what he's talking about,
What I was gonna
unfortunately.
say, and what I was
All
gonna
right, see. Welcome
anyways, yeah,
back.
what I
Can
was
you continue
gonna
explaining?
say, yeah, so think about dominoes. So one domino causes another, the other domino causes another, over and over again, right? And then when we talk about the totality, or like hierarchical causal chains, we're talking about the entire thing, or all things of one type. So what I'm trying to
All
explain
things at
here,
one time?
all things of one type, right?
All things of
And
one
so,
type.
yeah, so for example, I could say what caused all of these things to exist at this specific point in time, right? So not involving any progressions or anything. And so when
So
you
wait,
say
I'm
to me,
sorry. So like all things of just like, sorry, when you say that, you're just asking for the explanation of what caused all things of whatever set you want to specify to come about at one time. I still don't know if that clarifies to me what you're talking about, because like I don't know what kind of sets you're referring to where all of them came about at one time. Like what does that even look like?
no, it doesn't have to involve all of them coming about at one time. It's just revolving, looking at one specific point in time, okay? What caused all members of this set to exist?
Yeah, what does that look like? Could you give me an example of like all members of a set coming about at one point in time? I don't even know what that looks like.
I'm not talking about them coming about at one point in time. I'm saying look at a point in time, all members of this set, what caused those members to exist. Okay?
I'm
And
just
so
try. Can you try to just give like just one more time? Maybe I'm not understanding. Maybe that's my fault. Could you try one more time to rephrase what you're talking about? Because I really want to understand this distinction.
yeah, so what caused all members of a set to exist at one point in time, right? So we're not talking about like a progression of
Okay.
events. We're just talking
So you're
about
not implying that. Okay, that makes more sense. You're not implying they came about like spontaneously into existence at one point in time. Just that if you select
no,
a random point in time and you look at all members of a set, you want an explanation for why they all exist at that point in time. Is that what you're talking about?
yes. And
Okay.
What the
so
fuck? That's
I
also
don't
not
know.
what a hierarchical causal chain is.
uh,
Like, see, you have no idea what you're talking
hold
about.
on.
Oh,
Anyways,
okay. With that in
so,
mind, see, okay, even with like
mhm,
operating under that understanding, do you think that
so
there's a contradiction you can point out, even if we're going
yes,
to assume the definition you just imposed?
yeah. And
What's
so
the
the contract,
contradiction?
if you feel like I'm repeating myself, by the way, we can conclude. So I have to go off after this, but it's
Okay.
simply that we have a set, and let's say the members of the set are X, and then I ask what causes X, and you say another X, but X would be would that other X would be included within the totality of sets that requires a cause at one point in time, and so it's just not going to be a sufficient cause, right? It cannot act as a cause, because
Are you
you'd be
saying
saying that
contradiction about things causing themselves?
yes, pretty much, bro. That's what I've
Could
been
you
saying
outline what
since.
that would look like? What's the
So
contradiction in that?
in order for something to cause, it must exist, yes.
Okay.
So if we're asking what causes X to exist, and you're saying X causes itself to exist, you're presupposing that X exists in order to cause itself to exist, which just doesn't make sense.
Okay. So I'm going to ask it like a bit of a stupid question, but I'm really curious. So what if we affirm Do you think it's possible that X just always existed? Like how long it's existed is not really a matter of question, because maybe it just always has existed.
Um, yeah, but if X is mirrologically complex, or if X has parts, then it still needs to be caused, right?
Well, wait,
So
why
it's
couldn't those? Well, if you're going to invoke contradiction, you're going to say it's not logically possible for the alternative, right? So, like, why is it not logically possible that all their parts have existed eternally? So it's not really a problem of how long they've existed.
yeah, so all their parts can exist eternally, but obviously I'm a hylomorphist, and so I think that when we talk about composites or things composed of parts, you have the material and then you have the arrangement of that material. So although the material is eternal, the arrangement of that material is contingent because it could have been arranged in another way. And so that potential, in a sense, being actualized.
Wait, why could it have been arranged in another way? Like, there's plenty of worldviews, like necessitarianism, for example, that dictate that the things as they are could not have been another way. Like, maybe their organization could not have been another way. Like, why isn't that? Well,
yeah,
why is that contradictory?
I'm not affirming modal realism, right? So I'm just saying that within some like thought view, right, within our minds, we can imagine.
Isn't modal realism.
Bro, that's not. Can you shut the fuck up, please? Thank you. So
Sorry for
I say I'm not
bad.
affirming modal realism because you would only invoke necessitarianism to counter modal realism. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying that other possible worlds literally exist. I'm saying that theoretically, I can imagine other ways in which things could have existed. They don't have to be actually existing in some.
So you're saying because you could imagine something being otherwise, that it's therefore possible?
When I say possible, I'm not talking about in a realist sense. I'm talking about like in a theoretical sense, for sure.
Like in a theoretical sense. So like you can just conceive of like an alternative way that it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Yeah, but so why would that would be relevant?
I was gonna ask why would that be valuable?
Yeah, so if it's the case then that we can imagine another way that composites could be, right? They don't necessarily, or nothing about their essence or nature implies or necessitates that they have to be that way.
Well,
then
to be clear, like what I understand necessitarianism to be is that like we're making like a claim that the way that reality is how it was always going to be. So like when you say that you can conceive of it being possibly different in your mind, that doesn't speak to whether or not it could be possibly different within reality, only that you're just imagining it being another way. I don't think that speaks to whether or not it could actually be different.
I'm saying that the arrangement of that material isn't necessitated by its essence in any way, right? So, for example, let's take a car. The car doesn't necessarily, or the metal that the car is built out of, doesn't have to be a car, right? Nothing about metal in essence makes it so it has to be made into a car. I can use metal and make a fork or a spoon or a plate, right? And so when we have things that are seen to be one way, but could have been theoretically another way, there needs to be an explanation for why it's one way over the other way. Does that make sense?
It just seems like, well, you just said we were talking about their arrangements, and you keep on presupposing that they could have been another way, right?
No, that's
no, it does seem like you are making that presupposition that because the base material is not actually in the form of a car, then all cars as they are could have actually been a different way entirely, right? But I don't see how you gather that. Like it seems like you're making a claim that it's logically contradictory in some way for actually, at this point, I don't even know what you're claiming to be logically contradictory. Like, could you clarify what you think the contradiction is here?
The contradiction of what specifically?
A contradiction of what?
The contradiction with what specifically? Like, what are you talking about?
No, I'm saying I'm actually a little bit lost on what you're going for here. I don't even know what you're claiming to be contradictory anymore.
Would you like me to write it out, bro?
No, I would just like you to tell me.
Okay, yeah. So your question was, if something has parts and exists forever, then can this solve the issue that was presented initially? I said no, because even though it's eternal, it would still be caused, right? And then you asked me why. I said the reason as to why it would be caused is because although the parts for its existence have existed eternally, its arrangement is contingent, right? So take the metal.
That's where I that's where I brought up. So like that's why I brought up like when you say contingent, right? Like to me, maybe you disagree, but contingent kind of implies that it could have been some other way, right? Because the fact that it was dependent upon could have been some other way, so on and so forth. But under like a weird necessitarianism worldview, well, actually the facts prior could not have been a different way. So to say it's contingent is a bit of a misnomer. We would actually say that necessarily it was going to be this way anyways.
Yeah,
so that's what I'm
folks,
saying, is that if
my
you want to
wait.
provide, if there are actually just possible ways that,
Yeah, so folks, when I
sorry,
say,
okay,
I,
what do you want?
look, I can concede to necessitarianism. That's not an issue for me. So I'm saying the reason as to why it is that way isn't because of the essence of the object. So nothing about metal, right? So nothing about metal, the material is made out of, necessitates that it has to be a car. Nothing about the material necessitates
I don't think
it's
necessary that anything about the material necessitates it has to be a car.
No, because when we talk about God, right, or a merologically simple thing, something without any parts, its essence is its existence. So the fact that it has a certain nature is the fact that it exists. How when we talk about metals or stuff like that are composite, I can say, oh, a metal is this, a metal is that. Well, a metal doesn't have to be a car. A metal doesn't have to be a fork or a spoon. So the fact that the metal is arranged this way is going to be dependent on another object, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the question is that, like you said, that these things, that there was like these strings of contingencies that lead back to God. Like there was a question about that, whether or not these things were contingent in the first place, because calling them contingent would seem inappropriate if they were all necessarily going to be this way, and B, whether or not they actually do need to lead to some kind of simple being as you described, right? Which also I don't see why that would be the case. So I'm just confused on that, and I warned you about this, by the way. I said, if you weren't able to like clearly communicate your views in natural language, why would you think that it would be more clarifying to go to philosophical language? But you like chose to anyway.
He doesn't even understand the philosophy language, by the way. He's like so stupid.
Yeah.
So anyways. I'm just I feel like we're both we're both a little confused, because it just seems like a really convoluted argument we're having, and I just don't understand why.
So you agree then that I'm just ignoring the heckling this Harry Potter guy. But anyway, you can go suck your mother. As I was saying, folks, so you agree that the merologically complex objects, the objects that are composed of parts, their arrangement is dependent on another object, correct?
Yeah, that's fine. All I'm asking for now is like, okay, even if you wanted to affirm that they were dependent on another object, and that object was dependent on another object, blah blah blah, so on and so forth, for all of time, infinity, whatever, what contradiction would arise from that?
Okay, so circling back now. Now we can go back. So the contradiction that arrives is we still don't have an explanation for all
That's not a contradiction.
Objects. Wait, hold on. Wait, can I finish talking, folks?
No, you can't, because when I ask you what the contradiction is, and you begin with, well, there's no explanation. Well, not having an explanation isn't a contradiction. I'm not interested in that answer.
Yeah,
what specifically is the contradiction?
So not having, I've given you the contradiction, and then you say, how am I affirming it? I'm explaining how. So, first and foremost, since there is no explanation for all composite objects, and an explanation, in my opinion, is the same thing as saying cause for something's existence, you're essentially saying that nothing explains or nothing causes this thing. And that in itself, when you invoke nothing as a causal agent, is contradictory.
I didn't invoke nothing as a causal agent. How is me wait. How is me giving an unsatisfying answer as to what caused these things tantamount to saying literal nothing caused these? You understand the disparity between those two statements, right? And you understand how that's not a contradiction, right?
So what do you mean by nothing? Define nothing.
Like literally nothing, like something with no, not even something, but has no properties, has no essence, no anything whatsoever. Do you think I'm claiming that that is giving rise to the universe, or some weird claim that I didn't make?
I'm asking, what are you saying gives rise to?
That's what I just said. I just told you what I meant by nothing. No properties, no essence, no anything. There's literally nothing at all.
I agree. And so the issue of this is, if nothing has no properties, then it cannot cause. Right?
No, stop. I'm not allowing for this, because again, to even arrive at this point in the conversation, you need to assume that me not giving a satisfying explanation is the same as me saying nothing caused it. What is the argument for that? That doesn't follow.
my argument doesn't depend on your answer, right? I'm telling you that this is the way it is. The answer for what causes all of these composite things is either A, a non-composite thing, or B, nothing, right? There's no other option that you can give. And so
Why?
if it is B,
Why can't you just say that? Yeah. Why can't you just say that there's an infinite array of complex things that gave rise to an infinite array of complex things? Why is that problematic? I'm still confused why it has to be a simple thing.
That infinite array of complex things, right, that gives rise to an infinite array of complex things is a part of the totality of complex things, right? So you're saying, what gave rise to infinite array 1, and you're saying infinite array 2.
Yeah,
that's
what's the contradiction with that? Again, like it just seems like no, I'm sorry. It seems like you're stringing me along for like an overly convoluted conversation. It's just not super interesting. I just want to know what specifically is being affirmed as both true and not true at the same time. That's problematic, and it seems like everything you've presented is actually not problematic, right?
Yeah. So please don't mute me again. Anyways. I never said there was an issue with infinite array 1 causing infinite array 2.
All right, yeah, just end this. Yeah, Miss Kissinger, please judge.
Anyway, can I finish talking?
Right, yeah, Judge Miss Kissinger.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, forks like destroy them.
Oh my god! See, you're so fucking retarded. Holy shit!
He's muted.
I really don't want to hear him ever talk again.
Jesus.
You just gotta get your XP up, bro. It's okay.
Dude, move him down to fucking locale for that. Eric.
Fucking paused by this Harry Potter virgin bitch, right? It's simple. So I asked folks what would cause the totality of non-composite things, and he wasn't answering the question, right? So he was saying, why can't infinite array 1 cause infinite array 2? But that's not the same thing as answering what caused the totality of these things, right? We're not answering what caused a part of these things to cause another part, what caused a subset for another subset. We're answering what caused the whole entire set. And I told him this would be disjunctive. It would either be A, a non-composite thing, or B, nothing. I then said, nothing cannot cause. Nothing is causally inert because it has no properties. And so if it has no properties, it cannot cause. That was the contradiction that his position entailed. I explained it pretty well.
Imagine being this retarded.
We have Harry Potter.
That's not an explicit disjunction.
But yeah, that's the conclusion, right? So it's obviously going to divulge into a non-composite thing, which is God. And so yeah. Forks, I don't think you need to give a reply. I hear things did well, you know.
Forks, you want to give a closer
after this too.
Look, if you guys don't feel, if you guys feel I don't need to give a closing statement, that's fine.
Like what? Who can suck?
Disjunction.
What are the other options? Sorry.
The fact that, it could just not have had a cause.
Yeah, so